is this study looking at what gives meaning and purpose and fulfillment to lives. And the number one correlate was stress. So like past stressors, present day stressors, even future stressors of like worrying and anxiety. The more people worry, the more anxious they are. Turns out the more fulfilled their lives are.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Thrive State Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. V, triple board certified MD and performance and longevity expert. And on today's podcast, we talk about stress, we talk about fear, and how to overcome it. Have you ever wanted to be a version of yourself, but you got held back? Do you go through life with stress in your business, in your health, in your relationships? Well, this podcast is something you're going to want to pay attention to because we're going to give you the tools and tactics to recognize fear, but not only that, how to start to overcome it. Now, before we get into the podcast, let me just welcome all the newcomers into the Thrive State Podcast. This is a place where thought leaders, experts, and my friends come to talk about leadership, longevity, health, well-being, relationships, and so much more to take our life to the next level. Knowing these tools and applying them will really give you access to the next version of you. If you're returning to this podcast, welcome back. Thank you for being a loyal listener. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the podcast, engage with us, and please leave us a 5-star review wherever podcasts are heard. That will help the podcast grow. Now, new announcements here. You might have already heard I have put together a passion project born out of love because mental health is something that is so important to me. If you suffer from burnout and stress, the Thrive State Summit is something you're going to want to register for. It is 4 days filled with 50 plus speakers, thought leaders like Dave Asprey, Vishen Lakhiani, Jim Quick, Naveen Jain, the son of Robin Williams, Zach Williams, celebrity Mariel Hemingway, all here to give their life experiences and tools to combat burnout and give you the tools to reach happiness, health, and human potential. You can register for free at ThriveStateSummit.com. And if you are just new to the world of Thrive State, want to know more of what it's about, it's really about knowing that how you feel, your energetic state, actually is the signal to your cells, controlling them how to behave. Whether you have optimal cells that give you optimal health, longevity, and peak performance, or whether you're giving the signals to your cells like they are in a stress state, diminishing their function, giving chronic symptoms and chronic disease. So if you want a bundle which includes free breathwork exercises, a free ebook on how to thrive to 105, along with so many more free resources, go to ThriveStateStarter.com and get your free bundle there. And on today's podcast, we have Dr. Rebecca Heiss. You know, the scariest thing to me is living in fear. That's not living. Dr. Rebecca Heiss has actually done tons of research and science around the neuroscience of fear and the neuroscience of human potential. As a biologist and stress expert, Dr. Rebecca Heiss is dedicated to helping us become more self-aware and overcome our instinctual limitations, the ancient, often subconscious fears that holds us back from our optimal performance and our happiest lives. Her research has been designated as transformative by the National Science Foundation, and it is waking up audiences all around the world. She's the best-selling author of Instinct. She's also a sought-after professional speaker and has found her calling in helping others recognize the power of biological applications in their lives. A former educator, Dr. Heiss spent much of her early career in the classroom at both the high school and college levels and was recruited to be a founding member of an innovative charter school with a focus on entrepreneurial thinking and impact-based learning. Dr. Rebecca has been honored to speak internationally on her work, including multiple TEDx talks, and her fearless message inspires hope and actionable insights to train our brains to work for us rather than against us. With her charming humor and palpable energy, which you will feel today, she's going to give you the tools to step out of stress and fear and into your true powerful self. So ladies and gentlemen, please enjoy this podcast conversation with Dr. Rebecca Heiss. Dr. Rebecca Heiss, welcome to the Thrive State Podcast, sister.
Hey, I'm so excited to be here.
I met Dr. Heiss, or Rebecca, Dr. Rebecca here.
I was going to say,
in one of
stop
our
the doctor.
She, has been wowing corporate keynote stages for 10 years now, really the expert in stress and overcoming fear, all the stuff. And we're so happy to have her on the Thrive State Podcast. And as we know, we start off the show with a segment called the 5 to Thrive, 5 quick questions, game show style. If she wins, she gets what? She gets a healthy meal on me the next time we eat. And since we're in this together, that time will probably be sooner rather than later. So question number 1, Dr. Rebecca, what did you want to be when you grew up as a child?
I wanted to be all the things. I couldn't decide. I wanted to be a veterinarian.
Oh.
And I ended up marrying one, so close enough. Let's see. I wanted to be an astronaut, and I wanted to be a marine biologist. So I got kind of close to the last one. The secret that I don't tell people very often is that I actually really wanted to be an actress. And we can talk more about this on the podcast, but it wasn't safe, right? It was never the safe choice because not too many people actually get to do that. And so I kind of hid that one. It was my dark secret of but I'm not going to tell anybody because what if I fail? Anyway, yeah.
Well, I
give all the insights
more about that because I've got some interesting stories about that too. And it just kind of goes into that potentially just something that's in our heart that's drawing us forward to potentially perform and to share a message. But once we really figured out what that message was, it's probably going what we're doing now. So awesome.
Yeah,
1,000 points. Question number 2 is, if you could travel back to any area in time, any time period, which period would you choose and why?
I can go back to my 12-year-old self.
Oh, okay.
I wouldn't go back that far. Here's why. First of all, I think we're living at the best time ever. Modern times are freaking amazing. Please, I don't want to die of malaria and dysentery and all of the. No, thank you. Please give me all the medical things and advancements that we have. I think we're living in a glorious time. I don't want to go back to anything. The only reason I want to go back to my 12-year-old self is to whisper some advice to her and to hey, it's okay. You're going to be all right.
No, that's beautiful. Question number 3 is, if you could have any superpower in the world, what would that be?
Flight. I mean, I know it's a classic one, but I also just like the idea of I'd be able to go keynote to keynote and instantaneously just here I am, no problem. And I don't know if you know this, but I studied birds for a decade. So I have a degree in ornithology. Super bird nerd right here. So yeah, flight is kind of important to me.
All right. Question, you're doing great, by the way. 3,000 points.
Yes.
For 4 is, if you were put on stage in front of 100,000 people, given a mic, asked to choose your go-to karaoke song, what song would that be?
Oh man, "Shoot" by Salt and Pepper. Ooh. We can jam it out right now if you need to. Let's go.
I got a little bit of rhythm. All right, 4,000 points for all the marbles. The last question is how does Dr. Rebecca want to be remembered?
It's such an important question. This is a question that I've been asked a lot recently. And this whole idea of legacy is something that I've struggled with, honestly. My entire life, I have to do the big things so that people remember me and my name is etched down in history. And the older I get, the more I realize that there are what I would call named legacies. Alexander the Great. I mean, whatever his name actually was, Alexander. Nobody actually remembers him, right? And then there are the unnamed legacies, and I suspect I'll be the unnamed legacy, and that is a really comfortable space for me because when I look at my life, the people that have influenced me the most, my elementary school teachers, my friends that surround me every day, their names aren't going to be etched on any book or any history. And I remember them for their kindness, for their showing up all in. And that's how I want to be remembered as well.
Ooh, goosebumps there. 5,000 points.
Yeah.
The next time we meet, and so many different places to go with this podcast, because one, we can go to, kind of the roots that we desire to go into acting. But that last thing that you just said, these unnamed legacies, I almost kind of feel like these named legacies only are attached to ego. Whereas these unnamed legacies is sort of like how we are as people, how we show up as people, and allowing somebody else to be able to see themselves, to be able to elevate their frequency so that gets on and on and on, that the frequency outside of survival and fear base that our reptilian brains have, but no, more towards who we are at the soul level. You know what I mean?
That's it entirely. And actually, what I realize is when my ego gets in the way, like when I'm like, wait, I want the bestseller, I want to be on that stage with 100,000 people you subscribe, and I will absolutely rap shoot, like, let's go. But when my ego gets in the way and when I'm driven by it, I actually become less of the person that I want to be, right? I'm not spending time with my community. I'm not taking care of them. I'm not showing up the way I want to show up. And so I've tried to really be more and more conscious of that, especially as I get older. Like this is all we get. So, yeah.
Well, I'm excited to dive in deep, and I'm going to make this sort of like a your own adventure type of podcast, and sort of let
my favorite
side kind of where we go from here. But let me throw out the following terms, and I will let you. I will chime in with additional questions, but I'll let you, as the stress biologist, decide how you want to take us on this journey. All right.
Love it.
3 terms I'd like for you to define with whichever order that you'd like is stress, fear, and ego.
And ego?
And ego.
Okay.
And if you'd like, you can throw in default mode network. If that's
nice.
But let's start there, and then I'll chime in. We'll kind of dance and do our salt and pepper thing as we go with this conversation. But I'll let you sort of just kind of take over in terms of how you like to build the story around these terms.
Yeah, let's start with stress. I mean, stress is the easiest thing to define, and I think because stress is any challenge to the body.
Yeah.
Period. Like it's that simple. It's any challenge to the body. That can be a good thing. That can be a bad thing. That can be something that doesn't require a label of good or bad. It just is. So, our body is stressed by sickness. Okay, that's a stressor that we don't really necessarily want. Our body is stressed by exercise. Super. Our body is stressed by sex. Fantastic. Our body is stressed by all kinds of different things. I think, unfortunately, culturally, when we say, oh gosh, I'm so stressed, people are like, oh no, that's awful. Like, what can I do for you? How do I eliminate it? And I don't think that's the right goal. So we can come back to that. Like the elimination of stress is a dead person's goal. It's not where we need to be going. But yeah, we can come back to that. So the second word, let's see, stress, fear,
ego.
Fear. Okay, let's go to fear. So I talk a lot about fear. Fear is, I rope together stress, distress, and fear. So distress is kind of the bad stress. And so when we think about stress being defined as a challenge to the body, if you have a challenge to your body that is bad, distress, I think that's often a fear. And the interesting thing here is fear can be a challenge to the body that is created by the mind. So and that's true for stress as well, right? We have a lot of stories up here.
Yeah.
I call them automatic negative thoughts, those ants. My voice has a name. I won't share the name in case one of your listeners has that name, but I've actually named this person that lives in my head that creates fears for me. And all the time she says to me, you're not enough. You're going to fail. They're going to reject you. You're going to not be worthy of this podcast, of this situation. You're going to bubble. You're going to mumble. You're going to stumble. That's fear. And I know there's all kinds of cute acronyms about like face everything and rise or I actually think as dorky as they sound, like there's something to it.
Yeah.
Like fear is biologically, we release very similar hormonal profiles when we're under fear, stress, and anxiety as we do when we're under excitement. So much of the response that we're having bodily is determined here, right? Is this an adventure or is this an ordeal? So my fear response is often, can I reframe that to have this become an adventure? And since it's coming up on Halloween, one of the reasons people seek out fear is actually because they can control it. Think about that. Fear is often a distressor because we don't feel like we can control it. So that seeking of thrilling rides or that horror film, we know deep down inside we're actually safe. So we're getting this release of dopamine and all of those like feel-good hormones without the actual danger, which is kind of a cool thing. All right, now ego. Gosh, how do I define ego? Oh man, there's so many different roads to go here. Let me keep it simple.
Yeah.
I'll go to the Stoics, and I am blanking on the name right now. I'll have to come back so that I feel better. My ego feels better that I'm not forgetting this. There's a Stoic who defines the whole purpose of life is to create a connection with God. Now, I'm not a religious person. It doesn't matter who your listeners are. If you're religious, if you're not religious, to me, it's the connection to the greater power, right? The greater peace, whatever that greater purpose, energy, meaning, universe, however you want to define it. And there are 4 things that pull you away from it: power, pleasure, money, and fame. Those are the 4 idols that we chase. And to me, those are my ego. I've got 4 idols that my ego goes for. It's the fame, it's the money, it's the power, it's the pleasure. And whenever I'm chasing those idols, I actually remove myself from that connection, from that more core purpose of who I am and what I want to become. So that's the definition that I'm giving. Lord knows we can go down 16 different paths of what actual ego is, but that's where we'll start.
Okay. And now we have those definitions. We can see how stress and fear show up in people's world, whether it's their family life, whether it be in business. There's this part of their brains that are perceiving stress that's actually creating a stressful response in their bodies. As a stress biologist, can we talk a little bit? Well, let's bring in sort of like, what we know about the default mode network, this primitive part of our brain and nervous system that is, I think, sought out to, keep us safe. I hope you're enjoying the podcast thus far. Now, I wanted to give you a really neat resource that I've been working on for the past year. Are you living with chronic stress, burnout, or the nagging symptoms of anxiety and depression? Do you find yourself battling fatigue or brain fog or feeling like you're not performing at your best? Well, what I've been working on all of this year is made especially for you. It is an online virtual event called the Thrive State Summit. You can register now for free at thrivestatesummit.com. But what it is this: you get to connect with and learn from 50 world-renowned thought leaders, experts, and some of your favorite celebrities. We've got people like Bruce Lipton, Vishen Lakhiani, Dave Asprey, Dr. Josh Axe, all united with a shared mission to tackle the mental health crisis that is impacting each and every one of us. Now, the Thrive State Summit isn't just another event. It is really my hope that it becomes a catalyst for change, particularly in this fast-paced world. And so what can you expect? You could expect to take home life-changing takeaways from all our experts, activation sessions to be able to bring you into states of calm and relaxation, really all the resources for you to become the best version of yourself. And finally, proceeds from the Thrive State Summit will go to 4 mental health nonprofits improving Rare Impact Fund, the Trevor Project, Good Days, Genius Recoveries. So please, if you invest in yourself, and please share this resource with your friends and family members. It's something I poured my entire heart into this past year, and I know it's going to help so many people. So register now at thrivestatesummit.com.
Yeah.
I think many scientists, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, feel like all these automatic negative thoughts, limiting beliefs, and things like that live there because it's sort of like our body's primitive way to try to keep us safe.
That's exactly it. And in fact, I make a habit of gratitude for that part of my brain, for that default network. I'm like, oh, thanks, brain. This looks super nerdy, but I do this. I'm like, I tap myself. I'm like, oh, thanks, brain. I know you're there trying to keep me safe. I don't need you right now. Right. So our brains aren't built for this world. They're not built for this abundant, safe environment that we live in today. They're built for this scarce, scary, dangerous environment of our ancestors where there were literal tigers, right, around every corner. Literal tigers, things that were life and death situations. And our whole network is there to protect us, to help us to survive those unknowns, those tigers. So I often talk about, I don't know if you're familiar with the Robert Sapolsky quote, but he defines stress, or what our default network is built for, is 3 minutes of screaming terror across the savannah. Yeah. After which either you're dead or the stressor's over because you've outrun the tiger, right? Things that really last longer than 3 minutes. And so our brain and our biology is there going, oh my gosh, you singing in front of 100,000 people, they're going to reject you. You're going to get kicked out of the tribe. You're going to die. Thank you, brain. I appreciate you protecting me. That's not how this works anymore, right? Like if 100,000 people think that I am terrible at it, the interesting thing, and I used to do this with audiences, is I'll ask people, if I made you sing right now and you just belted it out, you went for it and you were terrible, how would everybody else feel about you? And people are like, oh, we'd love them for it. We'd love it. Like you went all in, he gave it his best. And if he was great, how would you feel about it? Oh, we love them for it, right? Either way. And yet, when it comes to ourselves, it's really hard to give ourselves that grace because we get kicked. Our brain goes, oh, they're going to kick you out of the tribe. If you get kicked out of the tribe back in ancestral times, you died. Again, some updating for the brain is necessary.
So do you feel like, we basically just have the capacity to handle a certain amount of stress, and we almost sort of need to potentially discharge that amount of stress that's in our lives so it doesn't leak into the tiniest things like people cutting us off on the freeway? Is that something we need to do, or is it a different way to be looking at it?
Yeah, I'm going to answer that with a yes and. I don't like to think of allostatic load or like stress capacity to a point. Like you only get so much and then you're going to explode. When you look at stress models, you see a performance curve, kind of that inverse U, the normal curve, if you will, where like performance actually goes up to a point with stress, and then it starts to decline. And like when you get to this point, like that's when you explode. I think we have the capacity actually to reframe our stressors into adventures, like into challenges, but we have to have the tools to do it. So I often cite, Olympic athletes. You think about when world records are broken, they are under the most stress, right? They're stressed out of their gourds where their performance should be declining, but it's not, right? Because they've trained their brain, they've recalibrated their brain, they've reframed all of these stressors as opportunities, as challenges, and they're able to rise to that occasion. So it's a yes and. I think people do get to the point where like, if they're not naming their stressors, if they're pushing it down, right, like I'll deal with that later. No, you won't. It's going to come up and it's going to explode on you, right? Like that does happen. But I think part of our challenge is recognizing if we have these Stone Age brains, if they're built for 3 minutes of screaming terror across the savannah, let's give that to ourselves. Like when that person cuts us off in traffic, you don't need to scream at the person, but if you're really upset about it, go ahead and scream inside, right? Like this hurts nobody to sit there like it's like, I'm like really frustrated and get it all and name it for 3 minutes. If you do that, you're going to be exhausted, right? Like you're actually going to come down out of that physiological state. Because I don't know about you, but if you've ever been like really upset about something and gone for a really hard run for 3 minutes or done jumping jacks or push-ups or punch something, like 3 minutes of intense exercise is exhausting. Screaming for 3 minutes, exhausting. You're finally starting to get to a lowered physiological state where you can assess this as a more cognitive problem rather than that emotional based, like reaction.
Mm. So there's a couple things that I've heard here. And again,
Yeah.
multiple choice, choose your own adventure. I'm going to throw out some terms, but awareness, almost sort of like a acceptance and recognition rather than a suppression of certain things.
Huge.
Well, so let's talk about those things and potentially even provide a tool or technique, to be able to be aware of what's going on and to start to shift things in your body.
Yeah. So I'm sure you've heard the name it to tame it, right? So often what people do is when there is a stressor, they're like, I'm not going to deal with it. It's fine. I'm just going to suppress it. I'm going to push it away. I've got too many other things to deal with. The problem with that is the more we ignore stress, the more it comes back in fuller force. So it's like me telling you right now, like, don't think about pink elephants. Stop it. Stop thinking about pink. Quit thinking about pink elephants. Right? The more we tell ourselves, don't think about that. Don't do that. Would you just stop telling yourselves bad stories? We start to do more of that. So the idea here is actually to get it out. And one of the easiest techniques is journaling. So it's one thing to think about it. It's another thing to force yourself to write it down. And when we put pen to paper, not typing, ideally, right? Pen to paper, we actually pull that response from that emotional limbic center into our more cognitive frontal lobe, where we have to because writing is a cognitive task, and we're now writing out the stressor. One of the techniques that I challenge people to do is, especially when they're frustrated and they had a failure or something, I ask you to keep a disaster diary. So here's what this is. And this can be little disasters like, I didn't put the baking soda in my pancakes this morning and I was so embarrassed by it. Okay, that's a little disaster. I got kicked out of my job. I got thrown out. I got fired. That's a bigger disaster. I was diagnosed with terminal cancer. Okay, whoa, we're in these are massive, massive differences. But the disaster diary works the same on all of them. Mm-hmm. So what you want to do is you want to write down the disaster, whatever it is that is stressing you, a failure, a rejection, and then leave some space. And then you're going to set a timer. And a day later, you're going to come back to it. 6 weeks later, you're going to come back to it. A year later, you're going to come back to it. And each time, you're going to see if there's a lesson, if there's an adventure, if there's something that you've learned from that specific failure, from that specific disaster. Yeah, because every time I ask people, if your failures or your disasters are tied to your learning, are you willing to throw them both out? And people are like, oh, no. I learned so much. And I'm like, good, well, they're tied. So when we have a disaster, the faster we can pair, this too I can learn from, the faster we can get to that reframe, the more valuable it can be for us.
That's beautiful. I mean, I did something that kind of, works in real time sometimes, knowing that in my life, and I've had many disasters, they've all been so beautiful in terms of the lesson that I'm having. So in the middle of the disaster, one thing I can do is just try to realize at that point and be fully aware, what is the gift in it right now? I recognize as I'm looking for that, I'm turning on a different area of my reticular activating system. Like, where is the gift now? What is it? You're trying to look right now, and you're trying to grab all the nuggets,
Yeah. I want to caution. I want to agree with you and caution.
Yes.
Because I think so often, and I know this is not what you're doing, but we can slip into this space of toxic positivity where we're just like, it's hailing on me and my best friend just got shot beside me. What can I, what's the gift in this? It's like, dude, no, my best friend just got shot beside me. I need to actually address this so it doesn't pop up later. But yes, to your point, there will be a gift in it. And actually one of the most powerful pieces of research that I've read in the last several years is this study looking at what gives meaning and purpose and fulfillment to lives. And the number one correlate was stress. So past stressors, present day stressors, even future stressors of worry and anxiety. The more people worry, the more anxious they are. Turns out the more fulfilled their lives are. And that is very reassuring to me. And it continues to beg the question, then why are we trying to avoid stress? Right? Why aren't we going all in and saying, nope, that's fine. I know it feels scary, but this too is going to lead to a more fulfilled life.
We've heard you say all in several times now.
Yeah.
And although we intuitively know what all in is, let's define the trademark Rebecca Heiss all in sort of mantra. What does it mean to you to be all in, particularly as we talk about stress and fear here?
Sure. I may have to tell a story to get there, but to me, the scariest thing that you'll ever become, the scariest thing and the hardest work you'll ever do is becoming yourself. It's the hardest thing to do because you've got to fight through the biology, you've got to fight through all of the layers of cultural expectations. And it's really a lot of work to take off all those masks of who you're supposed to be and how you're supposed to show up. And am I pretty enough? Am I good enough? Am I smart enough? Am I whatever it is that you're supposed to be? And so the all-in effect is the ability to show up exactly as you are in that moment. And when I say all in, typically what happens, especially with perfectionists, is when given the opportunity to go all in, to give it their absolute all, they hold back a little bit. Why?
I hope you're enjoying the podcast so far. If you are, I just wanted to let you know, join our community. There's so many free resources and a great community of people that desire health, happiness, human potential, to have more in their life, more health, more energy. And when you have those two things together, you could create more happiness, more abundance, whether it be financial, romantic, all these things in your life. And if you're just starting out, you don't know where to go, just sign up for thrivestatestarter.com, because in there you're going to get a bundle of information that includes a longevity ebook, a longevity and performance resource guide, lecture notes that come from my keynotes at Google, at Fortune 500 companies, all the insights in that keynote in lecture slide form given to you. And then finally, breathwork. I share 3 powerful breathwork exercises to access calm, which really gives you clarity and peace during the day, to access energy if you need to wake up and really motivate yourself, and finally a breathwork routine that you could do every single morning so that you could be very intentional with how you create that day. You can find all this stuff delivered free to your inbox at thrivestatestarter.com. And our community is growing. If you want to be a part of a community of people that desire the Thrive State, that are really in Thrive State themselves and help other people along with that, you could be a part of the community. You can get group coaching from me. We do breathwork sessions, meditation sessions, and you also get to drop in and participate in podcasts in the future. You could find more about the community at mythrivestate.com. That's mythrivestate.com. So check out those resources. You're not going to be disappointed. And please enjoy the remainder of this podcast.
Very simple, right? Because if I didn't give it my very best and I failed, not a big deal, right? I know I still have the possibility of achieving, of making it if I've given it my all. But if I go all in and I'm not enough, oh my gosh, that is a terrifying prospect, right? What does that mean if I fail? What if it means? And we get to these stories of like, well, I mean, honestly, what it means is that like it's a not yet moment. It means you have some growth to do, or you have a lesson you get to learn. Like that's a great opportunity, but it's terrifying for most people. So the story that I typically tell around this is that, when I was 8 years old, I wanted to be a professional speaker. I mean, obviously, actually, I wanted to be an actress, right? I did. I wanted to find that spotlight, and I didn't quite know how to navigate that yet because it definitely wasn't the safe choice. And so I joined my local 4-H, and I did these public speaking competitions. And I entered my citywide competition. I win. I'm like, this is amazing. I'm like the best thing yet. And I make it all the way to states. And at state finals, I'm practicing. I've got this down, and I never show up. I played sick the day of the competition because it felt safer than going all in and potentially not being enough. And the all in effect is all about like, well, what is the cost? It's easy to measure the cost of the action. Like I might have failed. I might have been rejected. I might have gotten second. I might have gotten, I might not have placed. Oh my gosh. But what we forget to measure is the cost of inaction, the not showing up, the not going all in, the not giving it our all. So yeah, that's the all in effect. What happens when you do?
Well, that's beautiful. Now you speak to corporations and individuals, really be able to address this issue of stress, of burnout, of fear. And it seems like we need some of it, because if we don't have it, then it's not used to sort of drive productivity. But we know that there's sort of this balance at hand. And basically on either side, we have, costs of productivity. Are we going to be more productive or less productive? Are people going to be more engaged or less? Are people going to be happier with this stress or not? Is there going to be success, curiosity, creativity? So where's the balance? Where are people finding stress? Where, when you enter an organization, where are you finding most people? And what are some of maybe the best tools and techniques for you to be able to manage that, to be able to take something and create it into fuel for better productivity, happiness, and success in their lives?
Man, that is the $1 billion question. If I could walk in and say, this is where you need to be, like here's the stress curve, this is where you need to be, for everybody, that would be so great. The unfortunate truth is that it is a very incredibly individualized experience, because we interpret stress differently. What's incredibly stressful for you, for most people, getting up on stage in front of thousands of people like you and I do every day, that is their worst nightmare. For us, it's like, let's go. Can we get more in the room? So it's a very individualized thing. The technique that I use, I call it the T-3 technique. Right? The first step is, every time you experience that stress, wherever you are, whatever that stressor is, 3 minutes of screaming terror. Allow yourself to feel it. Name it. Write it down. Go for a run. Go for a jog. 3 minutes. Set a timer and stress out of your gourd for 3 minutes. Talk about the worst case scenario. Let it come in. It's okay to do that. Then and only then are you ready, because you're starting to lower your physiological state at that point. Then and only then are you ready to actually take those deep breaths. Now, I don't know about you, but you've probably been told just calm down. We are at that heightened physiological state, and you're like, screw you, I'm gonna beat this dude up. It's a horrible thing to be told. But once you've gone through that 3 minutes of screaming terror, those 2 physiological sighs, so in through the nose, right, sip, get that extra bit of oxygen in, right, where it leaks through your mouth, those have been shown in the lab to reduce cortisol instantaneously. That's a powerful breathing technique. So 3 minutes of screaming terror, 2 physiological sighs, 1 question. I ask people to start asking questions. My first question that I always start with is it a tiger? Is it a life and death situation? If it's not a life and death situation, all of these experiences that you're having in your body aren't helping you. So let's transform them into something that does, right? And then the questions become, what's the cost of inaction? What happens? What's the best case scenario? Because curiosity and fear cannot coexist. I'm going to say it again because it's so important. There is no brain mechanism that allows curiosity and fear to coexist, because for 200,000 plus years, nobody ever had a tiger charging them and went I wonder how fast it's coming, right? Or what color are its cubs? You don't get curious when you're under fear, when you're under that massive stress response. So when you do that, when you consciously craft some curiosity, it forces yourself out of that cycle. So yeah, T-3, 3, 2, 1.
Beautiful. And only because this recently happened in my own life, I wonder if we could almost sort of be that response for others. Just the other day, my fiance was emotionally charged, and I think what she needed for me at that point was just to listen and just to be there. And I think for me, maybe I need to have a cue where all I need to do is listen and sort of allow that thing to come out rather than to offer any suggestions.
Yes.
A little bit.
At least set that timer and like let her do it, right?
Right.
You make a really good point, honestly. So I talk a lot about the contagion of emotions.
Yeah.
We know inherently. You look around, you know how contagious fear is. It's incredibly contagious. Stress, incredibly contagious. Happiness, even more contagious. Right? Like joy. You watch a YouTube video and try not to laugh, and have the person next to you try. It's impossible. So when I'm gonna throw my tagline at you. When we fear less, right? When we're conscious about fearing less, what we're doing is we're inviting others to do the same. We're creating a space for them to show up as their authentic selves. We're creating a space where they don't have to show up in that heightened state because we're like, okay, we're okay. This is me. I'm here. Everything's all right. And when we fear less, we make room for others to do the same.
Yeah, so good. Yeah, and for anyone who's partners, don't try to fix the pain. Just, I think they need to get it out, and I think offer anything in that 3 minutes of letting it out is not productive. So listen.
And there's some research too, and I'm careful to dabble in this because this is not research I'm super familiar with, but especially for the genders, men tend to be fixers. Like, oh, you have a problem, let me fix it. Here's the solution. Yeah. And women are like, no. I need you to stop and just listen to me. Like, let me vent. This is what I just need you to listen. Don't solve it. Just hear me. So it's a good point. You're making a very good point.
As people kind of go through all your work, I know that, every time you speak on stage, people are like, how do we get to know more stuff? How do we get more techniques? And you've created something that individuals and organizations get to continuously use. And in fact, resources that are year round or 52 weeks worth of resources. Can we talk a little bit about your program, Fearless?
Yeah, we sure can. This kind of was born out of the fact that every time I give a keynote, every time, never fails. Somebody comes up to me afterwards and they're like, gosh, I wish my son, my daughter, my boss, my colleague could have heard that. And it's so motivational. I'm like, I love motivating people. And I want to transform people, right? Because we can all motivate you for a day, a week, an hour. Like, I hope that my stuff is sticky. But we also know the science behind this. And the science behind keynotes is like, you retain like 5% if you're lucky. Yeah. So I wanted to create a program that would allow people to not only hear it and feel motivated and excited in the moment, but to carry that through for a lifetime transformation. And so I created this Fearless Masterclass. It is 52 modules. Like, I'm insane. I'm an insane person. So 52 video clips of 5 to 10 minutes of me giving you my very best material around identity, stress and anxiety, confidence building, boundary setting, fear of failure, fear of rejection, and manifesting, which is my favorite chapter on, I call it manifesting for scientists and skeptics, because that word I think gets tossed around a lot. And I'm like, there's some science here, folks. And it's got this, forgive me, I'm going to grab this. It's got this beautiful workbook that it comes with. That for every module, there is this prompt and continued work and habit bands. So these neurocognitive habit bands that are based in cognitive science to help you develop new habits and you change your old ways. So it's a masterclass. I'm super, super excited about it. We've had a couple companies go through it and a lot of individuals that have been very pleased with it so far. So it's exciting for me.
That's super awesome. And just because I don't get the opportunity to ask a PhD level scientist about manifesting, can you give a little bit of a sneak peek as to what this is all about? I mean,
yeah, sure.
This has something to do with intention and the frequency of intention and how it brings more things into your life. Talk about that.
Yeah. I mean, I'm trying to decide which road I want to go to. We'll do a simple one. Do you remember the first time you fell in love, or the last time you fell in love? Doesn't matter.
Okay, sure. Mm-hmm.
Just go back in time to that space.
Mm-hmm.
It could be pouring down rain. Your boss could be screaming at you. It could be like one of the worst weeks of your life.
Yeah.
But that's not what you remember. Because what you remember, you're creating this honeymoon effect.
Yeah.
Right? Where your focus is on love. And because your focus is on this new love, this hope, this opportunity, this like next thing, none of the other stuff, none of the negative stuff, it just kind of like goes off like water off a duck's back. You're like, this is not even, I'm not even paying attention to it. And so much of manifesting is the shifting of attention to the positive things, to the opportunities, to the things that are all around us at all the time. But our brain is naturally wired for the negativity bias, and so we get dragged down a lot. That's the preview of it. And then there's some really quirky, like outside science that is super fun that I've incorporated in about how Roombas spend more time around animals, not because of the fur, but like maybe there's some connection there. I'll leave that with an asterisk.
Wow.
I get like in some like really interesting like quantum mechanics. We talk about quarks. And I will say, I don't want to scare anybody with this, but I go into the physics of it. It's very accessible, right? It's not, if you're not familiar with science, it's okay. I will break it down for you. But at the cellular level, like what are you? Well, you're mostly not human, right? You're mostly bacteria. There's more bacteria cells on you than there are human cells on you. What does that mean? Well, and we replaced our cells, all of our cells. What does that mean? Like, am I actually? Anyway, I'll stop there. It's exciting stuff.
You followed the network or not? Something great.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I look. This really, really intrigues me, and I hope people out there are intrigued as well. Where do people find more about what you do, how to book you, and more? Sure. If they want to actually do this Fearless Masterclass, where do they access it?
Yeah, I mean, the easiest thing to do is to find me on my website. It's just RebeccaHeiss.com. And you can find my course there. If you're interested, if you want to learn more, if you want to talk with me more, I am a super accessible person. Please find me on the socials, like Dr. Rebecca Heiss, on Instagram, on Twitter, on all the, I guess it's X now, sorry, on all the socials. Reach out to me. I'm happy to have a further conversation with you. I'd love to come work with your organization or with you as an individual. So yeah, don't hesitate.
All right. Last question for you. Everything you've done, your PhD work to the work that you're doing now with individuals, organizations, what has been your best medicine?
Failure. Again and again and again and again. Failure and the humility that it brings. Because in those moments of like absolute ego devastation, I find who I really am again. And it's such a grounding, wonderful experience to share. So I think that in combination with connection, I don't know if I can have one without the other, but yeah.
Well, commonalities happen with basically what you shared is basically that ego dissolution,
mm-hmm.
connection, because you can't truly connect, if your ego is present.
That
certainly that failure thing is like, oh my God, you get to lose some of this stuff once you go through it. So beautiful.
That's it. Yeah. Woo!
I love our conversation today. Goosebumps all over throughout the conversation. Rebecca, I can't wait to buy you dinner the next time that we meet. Thank you.
Me too. I'm stoked for it. Thank you.
Thrive Podcast.
Thanks so much. It was a blast. I appreciate you having me here.
I hope you enjoyed that episode of the Thrive State Podcast. And if you're finding that this content is really helping you and your family members, please consider supporting our mission and our cause of elevating health, happiness, and human potential for people all over the world. You can do so by making sure that you subscribe to this podcast, sharing it with your friends and family members, and leaving us a 5-star review wherever podcasts are heard. All these things are going to really help elevate the show and to give us the resources to continue to bring more content just like this to yourself as well as the people that you love. If you haven't already, you might want to consider joining our community. We actually have a community where people get to engage with me in group sessions where we do breath work, meditation, where we do challenges together, really to be able to get us access to health, happiness, human potential so that we could have longevity and performance in our life as well. You can check out our community at mythrivestate.com. That's mythrivestate.com. And if you haven't already, pick up a copy of my book, Thrive State. It really gives you all the tools, the pillars that you need to create a blueprint to control the energetics of your life. Who are you? How you show up in the world? The choices that you consistently make create an energy in your body, and you can control this. And when you can control that, you also control the messages you give to your DNA that gives you access, again, to optimal health, longevity, and peak performance. And let me also just share a free gift to you. If you haven't already, please pick up my longevity and performance bundle where I share lecture notes, ebooks, breathwork exercises, and longevity and performance resources at thrivestatestarter.com. Thank you so much for being a part of this community. Thank you for helping us grow. Remember always, my friends, that you are your best medicine.